A true story from Georgia. The morning my son threw my pill bottle across the kitchen, something inside me finally broke, but quietly. The way bones do when you've been leaning on them too long. "You're not a charity," he screamed. "Move out." The bottle hit the floor and rolled under the refrigerator. A few white pills scattered across the tiles like tiny broken teeth. I didn't rush to pick them up. I couldn't. My chest felt tight, my left arm burning the way it always did when I missed my heart medication. I stood there, motionless, on the other side of the kitchen island, same island where I had once packed his school lunches. The same counter where I had pressed cool vinegar-soaked cloths to his forehead when fever shook his little body at night. Now he stood there red-faced, fists clenched, eyes full of something I didn't recognize anymore. His wife was nearby, pretending to be busy, pretending not to hear. Like always, I slowly bent down, one hand gripping the counter for balance. It hurt, but I didn't groan, didn't ask for help. Silence had become my language in that house. I reached under the fridge and wrapped my fingers around the plastic bottle. Familiar, cold, and then the memories came. Uninvited, heavy. I was 28, single, working night shifts at the hospital, skipping meals so I could send my son to college with a full pantry, sewing patches onto his jeans instead of buying new ones, selling my wedding ring to buy his first bike, holding him close when his father walked out and never came back. I gave him everything I had, and now he was calling me a leech. This hadn't happened overnight. It never does. It started with small things, comments whispered under breath, sighs when I entered a room, then decisions made without me. My upstairs bedroom quietly taken for the kids, my TV unplugged to save money. Questions like, "Do you really need the AC on all night at your age?" Each month brought a new humiliation dressed up as practicality. I moved in after my husband died. Cancer took him in 7 months. 40 years Tojtharan. Suddenly, I was alone in a house filled with echoes. My son said it would be good for everyone if I lived with them. Help with the kids. Save money. Keep each other company. At first, it felt like love. I paid bills, helped with repairs, wrote checks when things were tight. When they couldn't get approved for the house, I co-signed the mortgage. My name went on the deed. I never thought that detail would matter. Years later, standing in that kitchen, my son looked at me and said, "You act like we owe you something." I straightened it, not out of pride, but instinct. "I never asked you to take me in," I said softly. He scoffed. "Oh please, what were you going to do? Die alone in that old house?" That was the moment I realized something painful and clear. He had forgotten, or worse, had convinced himself that I was nothing more than a guest. "If you want me gone," I said quietly, "just say so." He didn't hesitate. "Fine. I want you gone." I nodded. Then I turned and walked toward my room, not the one upstairs, the one by the laundry machines, the room that smelled like detergent and loneliness, the room where they kept the dog's crate. I opened my nightstand. Inside was an envelope, and inside that envelope was the truth they had forgotten. I didn't pack that night. I sat on the edge of the thin mattress beside the laundry machines, listening to the dryer hum like it was breathing for me. The air smelled of detergent and damp walls. This was the room they had given me when I stopped being family and started being furniture. Above me, I could hear my grandson running across the floor. Laughter, a television playing, life continuing without me. The next morning, nothing changed. And somehow, that hurt more than the shouting. My son drank coffee at the table I had bought. His wife scrolled through her phone. No one looked at me. No one asked if I had taken my medication. The pill bottle stayed in my pocket, wrapped in a cloth so it wouldn't rattle. Days passed, then weeks, and the rules started appearing quietly, like traps. I was too noisy in the mornings. I was always in the way. I was asked to eat later, after the kids, then blamed for being distant. I learned how to disappear. The rocking chair I once held my son in was moved to the garage. My clothes were folded into smaller spaces. My dresser vanished one afternoon while I was at church. When I asked where it went, my daughter-in-law smiled thinly. "The kids need more room." I nodded. I always nodded. I stopped eating at the table. I stopped turning the TV on. I stopped humming while I cooked. The house grew quieter but not kinder. One afternoon, I overheard them talking. She's like a shadow, my daughter-in-law said. Just waiting to die. My son replied. I stood frozen in the hallway holding a pair of baby socks. Tiny, blue socks I had washed and folded with care. Something cracked inside me then. Not my heart. My patience. A week later, I found an envelope slipped under my door. No warmth. No greeting. Statement of monthly contribution. $800. Due by the 5th. Rent. I stared at the paper until the words blurred. Rent for the house my name was still on. For the roof I had paid for. For the walls that bore my signature in ink they had never bothered to erase. I walked into the living room holding the envelope. What is this? I asked. My son didn't even look at me. It's fair. Everyone contributes. I already did. I said quietly. He sighed like I was exhausting him. That was years ago. You can't keep bringing that up. That night, my bed was dismantled. By morning, I was moved again this time into the basement. Concrete floor. One small window. A pull-out cot thin enough to feel every ache in my back. My medication was moved too. Mixed up. Misplaced. I started carrying it in my pocket. Then came the lies. My church friend stopped picking me up. Your son said you weren't feeling well. She told me. The neighbors stopped waving. Thought you were moving out. One said. They were rewriting me. And I realized something terrifying. They weren't just pushing me out. They were waiting for me to disappear. That was the morning I collapsed. I hit the floor hard. The cold tile pressed against my cheek. I remember the dog barking. I remember my grandson crying upstairs. I remember my daughter-in-law saying, "She's fine," always putting on a show. My son didn't call an ambulance. I lay there until I could stand. And when I did, I didn't cry. I went to my room. I sat on the cot. And I opened my notebook. I started writing. Dates. Amounts. Receipts. Every check. Every repair. Every cruelty. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't planning to survive. I was preparing to leave. I didn't tell anyone I was leaving the house that morning. I wrapped my coat tight, slipped my notebook into my bag, and walked out like a ghost quiet. Unnoticed. Exactly how they had trained me to be. The bus stop was cold. My knees hurt. But I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Clarity. I went to the bank first. The young man behind the counter smiled politely. The kind of smile people give old women when they expect confusion. I placed my papers on the desk. Deeds. Statements. Old contracts yellowed with time. I need copies of everything. I said. He frowned slightly. These accounts are significant. They should be. I replied. They are mine. He disappeared into the back room. When he returned, his tone had changed. Mom, did you know this house is still legally under your name? I nodded. Yes. And the renovation loan. He continued. You paid it off. A loan. Yes. And your son's business debt, I covered that too. I said softly. He looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. I left the bank with a thick envelope and a strange lightness in my chest. Next, I went somewhere I hadn't been in years. A small law office above a bakery. The lawyer was a woman about my age. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she closed the file slowly. They have no legal right to treat you this way. She said, I don't want revenge. I replied, I want peace. She studied me carefully. Peace often comes after truth. We began the process. Quietly. I didn't confront them. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I became smaller on purpose. I cooked when told. I ate when allowed. I slept in the basement without complaint. They mistook my silence for weakness. Meanwhile, letters were being drafted. Documents were being filed. Accounts were being frozen one by one. I opened a small savings account in my own name. The bank manager insisted on helping me personally. You should have done this years ago. He said gently. Yes. I replied. But I needed to learn something first. At home, my daughter-in-law grew bolder. She complained openly about me. She told friends I was losing my mind. She joked about nursing homes. My son laughed along. They had no idea. One evening, I overheard him say, "She doesn't have anywhere to go." He was wrong. I had somewhere to go. I had my dignity waiting for me. Just outside the door. The lawyer called me 2 weeks later. "It's time," she said. That night, I packed for real. Just one suitcase. Inside it, my documents, my notebook, my medication, and a photo of my late husband. Smiling the way he used to when he trusted me to handle things, I left a note on the basement cot. "I will no longer be invisible." And for the first time in years, I slept somewhere warm. They noticed my absence before they noticed my note. My daughter-in-law was the first to panic. She searched the basement, then the laundry room, then my old closet upstairs as if I might be folded away like something misplaced. "Where did she go?" she asked. My son shrugged. "She'll be back. She always comes back." But then the letters arrived. One white envelope slid through the mail slot. Then another. Then a third. Each one heavier than the last. My son opened the first one while standing at the kitchen counter. His face changed slowly, like a sunset going the wrong way. "What is this?" he muttered. My daughter-in-law leaned over his shoulder. Her smile disappeared. "Notice of asset review. Loan reassessment. Property ownership confirmation." They read them again. And again. By evening, the phone calls began. "Mom, where are you? This isn't funny. Why are the accounts frozen?" I didn't answer. The next day, a legal notice arrived, formal. Stamped. Undeniable. The house. My house. They had 30 days to vacate or renegotiate at this time. With me as the authority. My daughter-in-law screamed. My son slammed doors. They blamed each other. "She planned this. You said she had nothing." For the first time, they were afraid. At the law office, I sat calmly while my lawyer reviewed everything. "They underestimated you," she said. "Yes," I replied. "I helped them do that." My son finally came in person. He looked smaller without his anger, older without his certainty. "You embarrassed us," he said. I met his eyes. "No, you embarrassed yourselves. You could have just talked to us," he insisted. I laughed softly. "I did. For years. You didn't listen." My daughter-in-law didn't come. She sent messages instead. Angry ones, pleading ones, then kind ones. I ignored them all. Because something had shifted. I wasn't asking to belong anymore. I was deciding. The lawyer slid a document across the desk. "Your choice," she said. "You can sell the house. Or you can take it back." I thought of the basement. The cold floor. The pill bottle in my pocket. "You'll take it back," I said. That night, my son called again. "Mom, please," he whispered. "We're family." I closed my eyes. "Family doesn't charge rent," I said. "Family doesn't wait for you to die." Silence. And then, a knock at my new door. The knock at my door wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. I opened it slowly. My son and his wife stood there, shoes wet from the rain. Expressions stormy and uncertain. "Mom," he started. His voice caught somewhere between anger, fear, and shame. I folded my arms. "I'm home," I said softly. Not triumphant. Just calm. His wife tried to interrupt. "No." I held up a hand. "Yeah, I'll get your turn to talk. One at a time." He swallowed hard. This isn't fair," he whispered. "You took everything." I smiled faintly. "Everything? Or only what you assumed was yours?" The words hit him like ice. He glanced at her. She looked away, unable to meet my eyes. I stepped aside and gestured for them to enter. The house felt different now. Mine. Calm. I poured 3 cups of tea, the good one. The one I had hidden from her cheap brand. Set them on the table. Simple. Quiet. Power in silence. Not in shouting. They didn't set immediately. My son's shoulders slumped, as if the years of entitlement were finally too heavy. "Mom." I shook my head gently. "You don't get to start with apologies." "Not yet." I pulled out the envelopes. The receipts. The deed. The mortgage statements. Laid them in front of him one by one. Each paper a testament. Each one a silent accusation. His hand shook slightly as he touched the first one. The recognition came slowly. Confusion. Then guilt. Then silence. You never asked me to live here, he murmured finally. No, I said. I offered. You assumed. You forgot. And that is the difference between giving and taking. She finally spoke. Voice low. Brittle. We didn't mean. You did. I replied. No. You did. I said again. No arguments. No excuses. Just truth. They looked around. The furniture I had chosen. The counter I had organized. The kitchen spotless. Everything pointed to one thing. I had been here long before them, and would remain the authority while they were guests. Finally, he sank into a chair. She hovered. Neither spoke for several moments. Then I smiled softly. 30 days. I said. To leave. Or to arrange your life with a clearer understanding of who holds the keys. Literally and metaphorically. My son nodded. Pale. Defeated. She nodded too. No words could undo the years of entitlement. But at least they saw the reality now. I cleaned up the table quietly. No triumph in my movements. Only calm. Only clarity. Later that night, I sat by the window, cup in hand, watching the rain blur the streetlights. I realized something. I didn't need their apology. I didn't need their gratitude. I only needed my peace. And for the first time in decades, I had it. The next morning, I woke before the sun, like I always did. But this morning, the quiet was different. No tension in the walls. No sharp glances. No judgment hanging over me. Only me. I moved slowly, as my knees and back reminded me they were no longer 20. But each step felt lighter. Not just physically, but inside. I went to the kitchen, barefoot, and started the coffee. The kettle whistled. The smell of roasted beans filled the small space. I smiled. Small pleasures. Small victories. Mine alone. I opened my suitcase. Everything I owned fit into it. Clothes. Letters. Memories. Receipts. A few trinkets. A life condensed into zippers and straps. I checked the envelope on the table one last time with formal eviction notice. The deed. The receipts. The mortgage statements. All my proof. All my rights. All my power. I placed the letter for my son and his wife neatly beside the untouched banana bread. They would read it. They would realize. And I would be gone. Walking out of the house felt surreal. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets wet and sparkling. The air smelled fresh. Clean. Like a new beginning. I carried my suitcase. Calm. Deliberate. Unstoppable. 2 towns over. May's house waited. Her lavender house coat. Her open arms. A warm smelly of a thing I had missed for years. Welcome home, she said simply. No questions. No judgment. Only welcome. I sat at her kitchen table, tea in hand, listening to her stories. For the first time in decades, I could speak and not feel invisible. I could laugh and not worry about judgment. I could be fully me. Weeks passed. I unpacked slowly. I planted tomatoes behind the little fence. 2 rows. Slow but steady. Like me, I began volunteering at a nearby women's center, sharing coffee, stories, and laughter with women who understood loss, pain, and resilience. They called me Grandma Justice. I laughed every time, and I kept showing up. Occasionally, my son called. Sometimes messages. Please. Regrets. I didn't answer. Not from cruelty, but from clarity. I had chosen myself. My peace. My dignity. My freedom. The house I left behind. Sold to a woman who would cherish it. A single mother working hard. Just like I once did. The banana bread. The letters. The eviction notice me justice. Delivered quietly but firmly. No screaming. No violence. Just truth and action. And as I sit in my new kitchen, the sun streaming through the window, with tea steeping and the faint smell of tomatoes from the garden, I smile. Not because revenge feels sweet. Not because I am unkind. But because I finally remembered who I am. A woman. A mother. A survivor. A person of worth. And no one, not even my own child, could take that from me again. Standing tall, the morning light filtered gently through the window of my new home. For the first time in years, I woke without fear. No judgment, no expectation, no walls pressing in on me. Just peace. I stretched, felt the stiffness in my back and knees. But it was a small price to pay for freedom. I poured myself coffee, strong and black, and took a slow sip, savoring the warmth. The aroma filled the kitchen, and I smiled. My kitchen, my space, my life. May bustled around me, sharing news from the neighborhood, updates on her garden, little stories about women we met volunteering. Her calm, welcoming presence reminded me what family could feel like without obligation, without guilt, without control. The past lingered. Of course, my son's yelling, his wife's cold eyes, the basement room, the pill bottle, the eviction letters. But they were just memories now, shadows that no longer held power over me. I had reclaimed my life, my worth, my dignity. I planted more in the garden that week. Tomatoes, herbs, flowers. Each seed I planted felt like a promisito myself. To my future, to the life I chose. I laughed more freely. I sang while cooking. I stayed up late talking with May about dreams we hadn't dared chase before. And though my son called occasionally, leaving messages full of regret and apologies, I remained silent. Not from cruelty, but from clarity. I had given everything for years. I had saved, sacrificed, endured. Now it was my turn to thrive. The house I left behind, sold to a woman who appreciated its charm, its history, its warmth. I had entrusted it to someone who would honor it, someone who would make memories, just as I once had. It was a perfect ending to a chapter that had once felt endless. I kept the letters, the receipts, the deed, a reminder that even when life seemed unfair, even when betrayal stung, I had power in my hands, knowledge, proof, action. I could defend myself. I could claim my life. And I did. Evenings were my favorite. Tea steeping, the garden soft with dusk, the breeze carrying a gentle calm through my open windows. I would sit with a notebook, writing letters to myself, dreaming, planning, remembering that I am not a shadow in someone else's house. I am the author of my story. And in that quiet, I realized the truth. Freedom is not taken, it is claimed. Peace is not given, it is chosen. And worth is never owed to anyone. It is inherent. It is mine. I do not hate my son. I do not need revenge. What I have is stronger than anger or resentment. I have life. I have choice. I have self-respect. And that night, I slept with the window open, breathing deeply, finally unburdened, finally whole. For the first time in decades, I dreamed not of loss, but of possibility, not of betrayal, but of joy, not of fear, but of freedom. I am Laya Avery, a mother, yes, but more importantly, a woman who remembered who she was, a survivor who stood tall, and nothing, not anger, not cruelty, not betrayal could take that from me again.